Hi Booktube, Aaron here. Hope you're doing very well. Today I'm going to be doing the Booktube or Booktuber Bio Tag. It's a tag that was created by Jessica from Jessica's Library Card. I first saw it on Steve Donahue's channel, and he's he's a rather nosy person, and so he commanded that everybody do this tag, and I thought about doing it then, but then a little more recently Joe Spivey mentioned me in his version of this, but I've been seeing it going around and seen a number of people give this tag a go, and I've been really enjoying finding out a little bit more about people, about themselves, about their channels, and about their reading. And so we'll see how this goes. So let's jump in. The first question is, who are you? Share a little bit about yourself, as much as you feel comfortable. So I'm Aaron. I am in my mid to late 20s now, and I live in South East Wales. So in the United Kingdom, if you don't know where Wales is. I haven't always lived in Wales. I was born in the northwest of England and lived in a town not too far from Manchester up until the age of 5, and then moved over to northwest Wales to Snowdonia, and spent my childhood there in an area of Wales where for most people the Welsh language is their first language. So I went to a Welsh language school there, and it was a wonderful place to grow up. Wonderful mountains, lovely beaches, and yeah, it was lovely. And then I've been down here in South Wales for almost a decade now, since moving away for university, where I studied English literature and creative writing, and now I'm down here. I work at a university. I work in a disability service for a university, and that is pretty much my life outside of my marriage. And I've got coming up to a year ago, we had our first baby, so I've got an almost 1-year-old daughter sleeping right now. And so outside my marriage and parenthood, reading and writing, that is pretty much me. I love music and art as well as reading, and I'm a keen guitarist and messer abouter on other instruments. Number 2 then is, how long have you been on Booktube? I've been on Booktube for, I think, coming up to 4 years now, which is quite amazing when I think about it. It was either April or maybe May of 2021, and so almost 4 years. Number 3 is, what kinds of books do you love to read, and has Booktube had an effect on what you read? So we'll go into what kind of books I like to read, and I've got a number of visual aids. So to start off with, what I still think of as my sort of base camp for reading, even though I don't read as much of it as I think I do, but I still think of it as being my base camp, is the Victorian novel. So anything from the Bronte sisters, so we've got Jane Eyre there by Charlotte, or Thomas Hardy as well. I just love that stuff. I think I love it particularly when it's a little bit moody and dark. I love stories that are sort of simple and to the point and relish in a sense of storytelling and of the author being more of a storyteller, someone there with you, rather than some kind of distant artist, like something like this, Captain's Niche by Pushkin. I love sort of crazy stuff that relishes in the weirdness of literature in the way that books talk to each other and the way we sort of construct reality. And so I think Borges does that almost better than anyone else, really. He's one of my go-tos. And in fiction, I love, really all sorts of stuff. As you're seeing, it's mainly more a classical or sort of slightly older bent, but I love anything from sad Russians to sort of quirky Englishmen. In non-fiction, I love sort of very personable travel writing and memoirs. This is A Time of Gifts by Patrick Leigh Fermor. I love literary biographies like this biography of T.S. Eliot by Peter Ackroyd. I love short, focused histories on particular events or periods like The Fall of Constantinople by Stephen Runciman, or big, sprawling history books like Simon Schama's Citizens, his book about the French Revolution. I love poetry, whether it's books falling everywhere, but yeah, whether it's the classical poetry of Greece and Rome, or sort of classic canonical poets such as Shelley, one of the romantic poets, whether it's slightly more modernist, more playful, experimental poetry like W.S. Graham, whether it's more contemporary poetry like this, Insistence by Alfred Darcy, or poetry in translation. We've got Fernando Pessoa's sort of selected poems there, translated by Richard Zenith. So all kinds of stuff, with I suppose more of a focus on looking at the past and trying to make sense of the past. I suppose, but I still sometimes read contemporary fiction. There are certain authors I look out for, and every now and then I do just dip my toes in the water to see what's going on. In terms of how Booktube has had an effect on what I read, I would say that there are certain authors that I wouldn't have gone to as quickly as I had if it wasn't for Booktube. So Thomas Mann is a case in point for that. Dostoevsky and Tolstoy are both cases in point. Trying to think if there's anyone else that particularly springs to mind. But yeah, there are a certain number of authors that I never would have, or maybe not never would have tried, but wouldn't have got to as quickly if it wasn't for Booktube. And then there's the Booktube Prize as well. I've judged in that a couple of times. The first time, I think it was in 2022. I think I did 2022 and 2023. In 2022, as a kind of experiment for that year, they had an extra round. They normally just have fiction and non-fiction, but that year they had a round for translated fiction, and I think it was 3 out of the 6 writers there, one of which I'd read before, but there are certainly 2 writers there that I absolutely loved, and So there was Laszlo Krasznahorkai and Maria Stepanova, and they're both writers that I've gone on to read other things by, and yeah, I continue to think about them. The next year after that, I read, I did the judging for just the standard contemporary fiction, and I think really there's only one book that stood out from the rest there for me. A couple that were okay, and then the rest didn't really speak to me. So yeah, there have been books that I wouldn't have read if it wasn't for Booktube. That's my long-winded way of answering that question. Number 4 is, what do you enjoy most about making Booktube videos? I think for me it's just that rather informal nature of the kind of videos I make and of the kind of videos I enjoy watching, where it really feels like a conversation. And I think sometimes when I'm making a video, after a while, the self-consciousness starts fading into the background a little bit, and I just feel like I'm talking conversationally and normally, and whether that comes across or not, it's yeah, so it's something I really enjoy and really relish. So it's not something that maybe could be pinpointed too easily in many of my videos, but it's a large part of what makes me keep doing this. I would still watch Booktube and feel like I was engaging in a conversation just by watching videos and by commenting, but then there's that feeling of being a part of it too when you're speaking, that yeah, just really stands out for me. Number 5 is, what do you not enjoy about making Booktube videos? I think for me, more than anything, it's when, and it's probably due to me not thinking out the video hard enough, but it is when I just start talking and I absolutely forget where it is I'm going, what it is I'm supposed to be saying. And so quite often I'll just restart a video, and it's when then, you know, it's sort of 3 or 4 takes into a video, and you know, sometimes I just decide to give up and do something else, and it only happens every now and then, but that's something I don't particularly enjoy, because I try to avoid editing as much as I can, and so I prefer to get it all in one take, you know, instead of just saying the same short sentence over and over again until it sounds right. That seems quite artificial to me. And then we're up to number 6. What video on your channel are you the most proud of? For me, I think it's a video I made about 2 years ago, called Why Do We Read? And it's a video that was sort of engaging with a question that was bouncing around Booktube at the time. Quite a few people asking what it was we were doing as readers, what is reading, and yeah, there are a few other tangential conversations going around, and I was really intrigued by people asking those sorts of questions, and again going back to that idea of this whole Booktube thing being a kind of conversation. I wanted to, you know, throw in my own 2 cents and see what I could say about it, and I was exploring the idea of what it is to read for empathy, and there being a sense of sort of the immediate idea of what you'd think of when you think of reading for empathy, where you're you know, particularly reading a novel or a memoir about a particular experience, and you want to feel like what it is, or as closely as possible to feeling what it is. You know, you want to have an experience of what the character or the individual in the book is going through. And although that in itself is a very noble, very good thing to be aiming for in your reading, it's surely not the only reason you would read. And maybe there are other kinds of empathy that you can engage with as a reader. And so I was trying to work that out in the video. I'm still not sure if I succeeded, but I enjoyed making it, and it's still a video that really stands out to me, and I'm proud that I made it. And I'm feeling like it needs a part 2. I feel like I need to address really what underneath everything else drives my reading, which is the question of curiosity. So I might make a part 2 to that video. Then number 7, is there anything you wish was different about Booktube? And I can't put my finger on anything in particular that stands out as anything I would want to change on Booktube. A few people have talked about things on the bigger side of Booktube, of people who make more professional videos, who make a living out of it. But I can't really think of anything in particular I would want to change. I'm happy for the good that I can find in most other Booktube channels, and so I'm quite happy with Booktube, and wouldn't want to muddle around and make things worse by trying to make things better. Number 8 is name 3 books that you have reviewed on your channel that you feel represent who you are as a reader. I'm slightly breaking the rules here because I very rarely make dedicated review videos, but these are all books that I've talked about, books that I'd like to really spend much more time talking about, and may make, where appropriate, some dedicated reviews for them. But they're certainly books that I've read during my time on YouTube, on Booktube, and come up again and again, I think. So first up, we've got what is probably my favourite novel of all time, and I wouldn't have read it as soon as I did if it wasn't for Booktube, and that's The Magic Mountain by Thomas Mann. Just a wonderful novel that feels like it encapsulates not really the whole world, but a particular kind of world, a particular microcosm of a particular period. It's a story about a young man who goes up to visit his a sick relative who's up on a in a sanatorium up in the Swiss Alps, and he's supposed to just be there for I think a few weeks, and he ends up staying there for 7 years, and it's in some ways a kind of sentimental education for this character about him finding out a sort of aesthetic or a worldview to help make sense of the world and of suffering and of death. And I think also there's a lot of tongue-in-cheek about European culture of the time, and it's all set in the lead up to World War I as well, so you always have those storm clouds on the horizon, and not to spoil too much, but they do eventually break out into a storm. So yeah, this is probably my favourite novel, and I don't think I can really point to a particular video where it features particularly prominently, but it has. I've read it twice since being on Booktube, so twice in the last 4 years, and yeah, it's just brilliant. So maybe I'll read it again soon and make a dedicated video about it. Next up, a poet who's featured in, I think, at least a couple of Poetry Thursdays, and certainly in a few reading wrap-ups, and that is the poetry of Rainer Maria Rilke, a German poet from the he started writing in the late 19th century, and then wrote through to, I think, like the 1920s, something like that. So he died in 1926, and it's hard to define exactly what it is I love about Rilke. There's a sense of expansiveness, and yet sometimes his poems are very finite and very in tune with a particular thing at a particular moment, whereas sometimes they're more philosophical and more existential and going off into these great big ethereal questions about what it is to exist and to suffer and to die and to decompose and things. And he's just wonderful, and he's a poet that I knew I liked as soon as I read him for the first time, and yet hardly understood. Now I like him even more, and potentially understand him a tiny bit more. And I'd certainly like to reread this collection of his poetry. This is not quite everything. But it's most of the stuff that you'd want, and it's got the Duino Elegies and the Sonnets to Orpheus, which are his masterpieces, really, in full. And then just get a piece of non-fiction to round things out. One novel, one work of poetry, one work of non-fiction. I was tempted to go with A Time of Gifts for this, but instead I'll go with A History of Reading by Alberto Manuel, which is exactly what it says on the tin. And it is, for one, just a really engaging and brilliant piece of non-fiction that, it's one of those that you could read as, if you're a reader who primarily reads fiction, I think you could read this and there'd be an energy and a life to the way it's written that would keep you engaged. And on top of that, I think the love of reading really shines through and sort of energizes you in this really infectious way. That's something I really love in my reading. And as well, there's this really curious, uncanny thing going on where you're looking at this thing that you do every day, and you sort of realise how weird it is, and it's a really interesting experience. So I'd really recommend this book as well. And again, I don't think I reviewed it. I very rarely do that. I maybe do one or two dedicated reviews every year, but I certainly used it in a reading wrap up, and it featured as one of my favourite books of the year during the year that I read it. So there we go. There are 3 books that I think represent me as a reader, and I would also heartily recommend. And I'd actually be intrigued there for any of you watching who, I don't know, it's interesting, because all I want to do in these videos is talk about what I read and what I enjoy in reading. And I suppose it would be interesting for any of you who watch my videos, if you've got a sense or you have a general impression of the kind of books that I like, and I wonder whether that's the same or different to my own. It would be interesting to know how, I'm trying to think of the word, how unaffected I am on the camera. Are there things I hold back? Are there things that I overemphasize? I'm sort of curious to see whether that's the case. but maybe that's a question for another day. Number 9 is name 3 booktubers whose content inspires you. And the 3 booktubers I've got here are really booktubers that go back to that style I really like, that I was talking about earlier. It's conversational, and for some there's a real sense of the booktube community sort of shining through everywhere, in everything that they do, and as well they're just personalities, just people that I've enjoyed getting to know through their videos. Okay, sorry, my daughter woke up. I'm going to try to speak quietly because I'm not entirely sure if she's asleep. So the 3 channels I'd like to mention. Number 1 is Kelly from Books I'm Not Reading. One of the earliest booktubers that I discovered, and very early on when I first started making videos, she was one of the channels that I very much modelled myself on, that sort of gave me confidence to sort of do things in my own way. She's a very kind and generous person, and again, it's just one of those people where it does seem like her personality really shines through. She reads a lot of classics. She loves Dickens and Trollope and stuff like that, and she champions loads of great events, particularly Shake-Tember in September, in March, which is a crazy a crazy month for events. I mean, I think this year she's really trying to celebrate the Irish Readathon, but yeah, in the past as well, things like March Mystery Madness and March of the Mammoths, she's championed. So yeah, a channel I really enjoy watching. Then there's Matthew from Maybury Book Club, and I just love the way where he just sits down and just talks about a book that he's recently read, and he'll just tell you about it, and it just seems like you're talking, just talking to someone in the park or in a cafe about what they've been reading. And yeah, once again, there's a very particular personality shining through in all of the videos, and there's lots of interesting books being talked about, whether they're sometimes more recent, like Michel Houellebecq and people like that, he seems to quite like, but again, more of a focus on classic literature. He likes what he calls dirty French novels, Russian literature, the classics of Greece and Rome, just all kinds of, just really wonderful stuff. And I'm often perusing my own shelves after I've watched some of his videos, sort of inspired by some of the books he's been talking about. And then the third channel I'd like to mention is Summer from Sterling Reads, who again I discovered relatively early on, I think, after starting my Booktube channel, or maybe even before starting my Booktube channel. Back in that period, her channel was still called Cozy Reading for Quaker Cats, which was a very memorable name, as is Sterling Reads as well. And I heard it was one of the first times where I heard a few people mention this channel name, and it sort of stood out. And then it wasn't auto-suggested for me, and I hadn't gone in the notes in the description to find the video, and so I just thought, I have to find out, what is this channel, Cozy Reading with Quaker Cats, and I found a channel, and again it was yet another just lovely channel, where everything was very conversational and very natural, and there was a wide range of stuff being read. I think probably out of the three of them, Summer is maybe the most eclectic out of them. Yeah, she reads all kinds of stuff, and it's always just lovely to sort of get a catch up on what she's reading. And it's not me clicking on a video to find out more about a particular book. It feels more personable than that. So there are the three booktubers who inspire me, and I've enjoyed watching for quite a while now. And then number 10 is Share the Love. It can be challenging to find your audience. Name 3 booktubers who you think need more hype. And I've got a couple here that are relatively new to me, and I'm still trying to get to know, but I've been enjoying what I've been seeing so far. First up is Aquarium Librarian, and then there's Really Random Reads. With Aquarium Librarian, it's again seems to be a bent towards classics, although there's some fantasy in there, and an interest in spiritualism, which is always interesting. Really Random Reads, again quite an eclectic reader, from what I can tell, whether it's more sort of classic fiction or sort of backlist fiction or mid-20th century stuff, and it seems like there's an interesting mix there. And then the third channel will be Joshua from Joshua Kribo Reads, who again just has a lovely, very personable channel, and again he reads, I feel like a stuck record, but he does read a lot of classic literature, a lot of canonical literature, but occasionally goes out and reads different things as well. Maybe the main reason I want to mention him is he's also a person who really loves poetry as well, and loves to talk about poetry on his channel, and he's someone that I like to listen to about poetry as well. There are certain poets that he loves, that I haven't spent as much time with, and sometimes it's a poet that I have spent time with and I want to get a different perspective on, and so they would be the 3 channels that I would like to shout out. And that is the end of the Booktube Bio Tag. I'll say that if you've been mentioned in this and you haven't done the tag already, then feel free to consider yourself tagged and give it a go. And really the invite goes out to anyone to give it a go. But I will leave it there. It's been a bit longer than I was expecting it to be, but I hope it was at least a little interesting. I hope I didn't rattle on too long. So for now, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.